So you're buying one ad a week from
I'm
the
buying
DE?
2 ads a week in the Times.
Okay.
And I sponsor the pet. They got the pet. Well, I sponsor, what is it? Sudoku on the puzzle. And it used to be the comic page. Now it's the Tom Tomorrow page and the photo scavenger hunt. And then we also sponsor, someone used to sponsor the pet of the week. And we took over that a couple of years ago.
How do you like the just the general sponsorship versus like a traditional ad placement?
It's much cheaper than traditional ad cheap. If I was doing a traditional ad placement, I could pick where I wanted to be in the paper. I could pick above the fold, but it's going to cost me more.
Yeah.
By sponsoring something like the Pet of the Week and the Sudoku, I give up flexibility but I know where I'm going to be.
Yeah.
And I lose a little bit of control because I have to have the Sudoku puzzle in there, and I have to have the Pet of the Week in there. That's part of the deal if you sponsor.
Have you always been an animal?
Oh yeah, I've
guy?
got 6 cats, so only one of which I actually wanted.
That's generally how cats go, right?
Yeah, the rest of them all kind of moved in, or I was feeding. They were all feral. And okay, I'm tired of going out feeding you at 10 o'clock at night in below freezing weather. You're coming inside where it's warm. They weren't, and they adapted to, we get we get a warm place to sleep, we get regular food, we get fresh water. Yeah, I can live with this.
So, and your cats regularly make an appearance in your 3 things that made me happy today.
Oh yeah.
Post.
That's the wonderful thing about cats, dogs, animals, and pets in general. They don't need a lot of. They're not going to get mad at you because of something you did or say, because as far as they're concerned, they're going, bah, 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 bah. They have no idea what you're saying. And even when I step on them, it's okay, here, have a kitty treat, and they're back rubbing up against me again.
Right.
A human is likely to bear a grudge or be irritated about you and sit there and quietly fume. Animals generally, as long as you don't consistently hurt them, they don't have a memory about that sort of thing. They're going to be running. They're going to be you hurt your dog, you step on its feet because it's getting underfoot, and 5 minutes later, it's bareback wanting to be its head scratched again. Now, if you are a stupid piece of garbage that continually hurts a dog, then you're gonna. I've got a friend who, her dog, she adopted a rescue dog, and that dog does not like anybody. She's the only one it will tolerate because it was abused earlier in its life.
Yeah. I mean, that's the. I struggle with this in the group because I'm not a pet person, so I don't have a whole lot of context for what is proper pet etiquette and what is not. So like we had somebody yesterday that just posted, here are these dogs. And it's like, okay, well, are these lost dogs or these dogs you're just trying to give away just because you're giving away dogs? And it's like, no, I'm not going to just be a pet dumping ground. Like if we're helping to find lost pets, that's one thing. But if we're just, owners that have, for one reason or another decided that they can't do the pet thing anymore, it's like there are proper channels for that to go through. Go talk to your Humane Society or to St. Francis and be like, hey, I've got these pets that I can no longer care for.
Okay, so what is the purpose of what WTF Carbondale then?
Oh, that's a good question. What is the purpose of WTF Carbondale? It goes down to community self-reporting. Right. So it is the idea that folks can observe, engage, and storytell themselves as part of this broader entity that is the physical community of Carbondale. Right. So for me, coming from a very like a digital first kind of marketing, branding, and communication background, what I've really picked up on in the last several years is that self-reporting is an action that is replacing traditional reporting, like the Carbondale Times or like the Southern Illinois, and just because of the volume and the rate with which media hits the consumer, right? So how do you maintain a level of integrity and checks and balances that a traditional news reporting organization maintains, but have that open to folks? And that comes kind of twofold. One is a little bit of moderation as administrators of a group or of a digital space. The other side of it is the self-moderation of the people in that digital space. So people, in their interactions and their criticisms or their welcoming of particular types of content, that directs whether or not something is a legitimate piece of communication in the larger public sphere.
Okay. Now, when WTF Carbondale started off, as far as I can tell, it seemed to be a forum for, oh my God, I can't believe this actually happened. This seemed to be a really stupid thing that somebody did. Here's a picture of it. And now it appears to have morphed into more of a community bulletin board. And I wouldn't call it actually a report because it's by people generally post on it either when they're looking for something which seems to be like a next door type of feature, but you don't have to register. I don't need to register for one more social media, if I can use that. And this is something that's irritating me, and I want to let everybody else know about it. Forum.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Oh yeah. I mean, the people that participate guide what the group ultimately ends up being at any given point in time, right? So early on in the group, there was a lot of back and forth. I remember specifically the argument over people plastering things on the side of trash cans, right? And the argument over that was one of the initial catalysts to growth within the group. But really that's just one silo of the brand overall, right? So while it's been pigeonholed pretty hard into the group is what defines the brand, it's only existed for about 1 year, a little over a year, whereas the brand itself was created in 2015, not even by me. It was something that was actually gifted to me by the folks that started it. When I just asked for access for one thing that I wanted to argue about on the internet for and use the platform. So it's just, it is continually transformed over that time. Some of it being, me using it for personal wants, it sometimes being just seeing silly things on the street and wanting to share that. Now evolving into something where, I want to use it as a broad-based community resource, whether it's the group where people have these interactions and the call and response, whether it's something like the podcast now, where it's creating something that is a referenceable catalog of individuals and activities over the span of many decades here in Carbondale, right? People that can tell stories about what it was like many, many years ago, or people that talk about their experiences here and now, or people saying, this is what the future looks like to me. So, and then the possibility of the next step of this, which I haven't gone out publicly and talked about yet, but this is a really good spot to do so because you're somebody that very much understands and is engaged in media, would be going to a digital news reporting platform, trying to pick up some of the space where just a general lack of resources with our traditional reporting mechanisms like the Carbondale Times and the Southern Illinois, where they're seeing a reduction in their resources and having a vacuum occur there. Something's going to fill that, right? The question is, what is it?
Well, what needs to be, and this is one of the things that both WTF and Carbondale Gazette don't do. I do it more than the WTF does, and what the paper, like the Times and the Southern, do, is cover local civics.
Yeah.
I was just looking at Friday's Carbondale Times. They've got a thing here on Kids Corner. The city extends Kids Corner lease for another year. This is one of the things local media does, and the papers, and to a lesser extent the radio, because I know WSIU gets local people on and interviews the mayor and the chancellor of SIU, I believe monthly. But they're going to send people out to cover city council meetings. Nobody posting on WTF Carbondale is going to go sit on a city council meeting out of their own civic interest and then post a report of it on WTF Carbondale. I do it on occasion on the Gazette, but it's not as much fun when I have to do it over Zoom, because Zoom's a pain in the tuchus. I have missed a lot more. When I could walk down to city council, I would sit in, and a lot of times it would be me, one guy getting up to complain about something to city council, and then a couple of representatives from the Southern and the Carbondale Times. And that was it.
Yeah.
And that is that is one of the important things that local media does, is report on what your city government is doing. And a lot of people don't have any interest, don't want to take the time to listen to a meeting. Like, I did not know that the city had extended the Kids Corner lease for another year until I read about it on the front page of the Times here.
Yeah.
And I know there's research showing that if a city loses especially its local newspapers, because radio and TV anymore are not going to cover city council meetings unless there's something of really high interest, you are going to see a decline in people going out to vote in local elections, and off-year elections are abysmal. I think in the last the city council elections this year, we had maybe 10% of Carbondale's population come out and vote. And you're also going to see your taxes go up, because there's nobody covering and broadcasting to the community that this is what your elected representatives are going to do. A couple of years ago, we were the bond issue that had been voted on about 10 years ago to pay for new roofs at the high school. That was paid for by sales tax. It was scheduled to expire. City council voted and to go ahead, rather than bringing a new issue, rather than letting it lapse and going to the trouble of bringing a new issue up before the voters to get, hey, we want to raise this, we need money, the city needs funding, we need to raise the sales tax up again. They just went ahead and passed a resolution continuing to extend that period, that sales tax. I'm afraid that's going to happen with the Saluki Way sales tax when that expires in, I think that's about 5 or 8 years. And because they won't, if you don't put it, because most people are not going to vote for an extension of that, but the city does need money. God knows we have lost a lot of revenue in the last year, since a lot of our funding comes from sales taxes.
Yeah. Yeah. It is so much easier to roll over
absolutely
those activities, and it just, right, because everybody's interests align differently, right? The interest is in the actual policy action, right, for the city, not necessarily in the broadcasting component of it, right? And that's where the critical aspect of local news comes into play, because their interest is in the broadcasting, and what is in the best interest of the people is to simply be knowledgeable of these things, right? You can make up your own opinion one way or the other and then act on that accordingly, but if you don't know,
what's
you have
going
no
on.
interest at all.
And that's the job of local media, is to get, even though newspapers are not as widely read as they used to. I know the Times, we get in about 8 or 10 at the store, and people will go through about half, 2/3 of them, of course, of a week. I think they get picked up more at places like Kroger and Schnucks, where there's more foot traffic. But it's important. People should read if you're not going to go to a city council meeting, and a lot of people can't. A lot of people don't even know when they are.
Yeah, Tuesday nights at
Tuesday
6
nights,
o'clock on
every
the
other
first and
Tuesday
third
night
of
at
the,
6.
Do what? Sorry.
Every other other Tuesday night at 6. Preceded generally by the Liquor Control Commission meeting, in case you want to know if you're getting another bar or what's happening with liquor licenses in Carbondale. That's the best place to find out for them what's going on there.
So this ties into a really interesting point on self-reporting, and I'm going to do the break-in for the intro for episode 55 of the WTF Carbondale podcast with Scott Thorne, a marketing professor, a owner of a very cool and iconic business here in Carbondale, a generally involved citizen on the WTF Carbondale podcast, where we talk to interesting people about their interesting lives and tie it all back together to this little old place we call home, Carbondale, Illinois. Obligatories out of the way. There we go. So this ties into the component of self-reporting in my mind on this, right? Because accessibility helps to drive, self-reporting drives accessibility. And in the case of city government, right, it would be as simple as broadening where the filmed and streamed and documented city council meetings are visible. Right now, all we do is we film them and then they go on the website, but they're not accessible through any other platform that the city has, YouTube, Facebook, what have you. And in the case of like Marion, they post all of their city council meetings to YouTube. Right? Yeah. The city may consider, oh, well, we've got our internal mechanism, right? Our internal mechanism that we control and have guidance over. That's ideal for us. But on the other side of it, it's the question of, well, where are the people, right? The people aren't necessarily on the city's website, 3 links in, and clicking on the most recent city council meeting. The people are on YouTube. The people are on Facebook. You have to put it right in front of them so that they'll consume it. And that's very much, what the purpose of local reporting is to put that right in your face so that it's not tough for you to go through the motion of accessing that information.
But self-reporting comes with an implicit bias.
Yes, absolutely.
If I am interested in a topic, I am going to post, I'm going to write on that, I'm going to focus on that, I'm going to worry on that like a dog on a bone, to use the old cliche. A reporter who is generally more objective, although all objectivity in newspapers or media in general is a comparatively recent phenomenon. It only dates back, I think, to the late 1920s, if I recall correctly. Prior to that, local media was owned by political machines. The Southern would have been supporting either Democratic or Republican candidates and would be an organ espousing that position not only on its opinion page, but in the way in which it covered news. As newspapers got more competitive and more, I believe at one time, Carbondale had 2 papers a day, and this was typical for most communities because there was so much news, and that was the only way you got news out there, and people were willing to buy it. Now that you can get news 24 hours a day through your phone, through your TV, through your computer, it's hard for a print medium to keep up with that sort of thing. So and that was what led them to become objective, because that was one way to compete with all the other media coming into the market was, okay, we're not going to be biased. We're going to present a more balanced view of the news. And then, to quote Fox News, we report, you decide. And that was common. That became more a common standard from the 1930s up until about the 1980s, the Fairness Doctrine had a lot to do with that as well. And the repeal of the Fairness Doctrine meant that I don't have to provide both or give a platform to both sides anymore. I can provide my own side, and you can go find your own way to get your message out.
It's concerning.
Yes,
You know,
it
I
is.
talked to Jack Titchener about this on the podcast several months back, and we didn't go too in depth into it, but at least touched on it. Like, well, what is one of our core issues with the modern media world, and that is the dissolution of the Fairness Doctrine, and people having to be compelled to present some level of objectivity in the content that they release as news.
Well, there's also the fact that there's so many more channels that you could go for. I can go watch CNN. I can read the Carbondale Times. I can go to Explore Carbondale. I can go to MSNBC. I can read the WAPO. I can read the Wall Street Journal. I can, God help me, go to InfoWars. And prior to 1980, when CNN came on the market, you had pretty much if you wanted national news, you had ABC, you had CBS, you had NBC, you might be able to pick up some PBS, they had some, and then you had the Wall Street Journal, Los Angeles Times, New York Times, the Washington Post, and the Chicago Tribune. You had a very limited, especially if you were getting news over TV, you only had 3 places to go for your news. They all gave you pretty much the same story, and then you got the same facts. You could make your own opinions from those facts, but today I can go pick and choose who I want to provide how I want my news slanted. Do I want a strong liberal bias? I'm going to go to the Young Turks. If I want a conservative bias, I'm going to go to Breitbart. If I want a moderate, middle-of-the-road bias, then I'm going to still go to ABC, CBS, and NBC. But even then, you're going to find, those are horribly biased. And they are if you are watching something like Fox. They're going to seem biased. And similarly, if I watch MSNBC, I'm going to see Fox is horribly biased.
Well, and this gets us into the murkiest of waters as marketers of what is the truth. Right, and there, the
truth is objective. Your perception of it is not.
Yeah.
If I drop this newspaper on the floor, that happened.
Yeah.
Now, your perception, did I do this in a fit of pique? Did I just do this to demonstrate something? Did I do this because I'm angry with what's in the newspaper? How you watch it. If you only see a edited version, say 20 seconds of it, you have no idea what happened before I tossed this paper on the floor. You could draw and unfortunately you have a whole lot of other people who make money off of offering their interpretations of why I dropped this newspaper on the floor.
So this kind of gets me into something that I see so clearly in just the short amount of conversation we've had already, Scott, is how engaging you can be in a classroom.
Tell my students that.
Do what?
Tell my students that. Zoom has been a pain. It's very hard to come across to engage people in a classroom when you're staring at a bunch of black boxes.
Oh,
I
forgot the
we
Zoom
are in it's an epidemic, and we're still concerned about it. And so that is a problem with Zoom. It's really hard to develop a rapport with somebody when you're staring at a black box with a little mute symbol down in the corner and a name.
Yeah.
Most people don't even have pictures up on their screens. I got a name.
Well, before Let's talk about the before times.
Okay. Oh, back in the olden days.
Yeah, back when light came from fire. No. um, is this man? There's just you've really opened me up on this guy, and I appreciate that because there's so many interesting directions that I want to go on this. And I guess I'll rewind a little bit further and ask the question of what drew your interest to media, to marketing, to news, to all of these things. Is this something that you've always been interested in?
Nah.
Or is this okay?
Nope, it was recently. I don't know why. I just, part of it was I got kind of, again, it was self-interest. I got, I've looked at media and I'm interested in consumer behavior, why people do what they do. So again, the whole implicit bias thing and confirmation bias and satisficing versus satisfying, why we want to spend money on experiences rather than products. And that just... But frankly, what got me was the Saluki Way tax. I was just did not like the idea because I teach sport marketing as well. And all the evidence out there, unless you go and look for biased stuff that supports you, but in general, you are not going to find any evidence that shows that putting taxpayer dollars into a sports arena is going to generate any additional revenue for the community. At best, it's a break-even proposition. And I got kind of bugged me. We had the city council was in favor of this. We had, of course, SIUC wanted it because we're getting money from the city to pay for this. And Chamber of Commerce wanted this because, we're going to get a new, and the coach was telling them, we're going to see more foot traffic. There was no evidence. Students do not come and still do not come to a university in general because of its sports program. They come, I survey my students every year. Why do you come to SEMO? And I did this when I was taught at SIUC back in the 90s. Why are you coming here? Never because of the sports program. It's always, I needed to have a degree program here. It's close to home. It's far away from home. They offer me a better financial aid package than any place else. They did offer me a scholarship. The only ones you're going to get there in general who come for athletics is the ones who get offered an athletic scholarship. And it was just the whole people getting a generally comparatively one-sided, because the focus was we want to do this tax to get people to talk, and I could see where they wanted. They wanted to rebuild, because I don't know if you remember what McAndrews Stadium looked like.
Oh yeah,
but my
absolutely.
God, that thing was in bad shape. You could walk through the hall, there were chunks of concrete falling out of the wall. We needed a new one, but taxes or putting money into a sports facility is not going to bring more revenue or more bodies to campus. All it's going to do is change, if at best, is change how you are going to spend your money. People have a limited amount of discretionary income. You're going to shift it. If you want to go to a football game, then you're going to shift those dollars away from what you were going to spend on going out to dinner or going to a movie. And you're going to spend them on a football ticket instead. So I had no real problem. Well, actually, yeah, I did, because I could have done so much more with others that would have brought students in. Use that tax money, and I suggested this at the time, but of course not, was use that money to fund scholarships, because I remember I had read about some other schools that were taxing their communities and using it to fund scholarships to bring students to the campus, to go to school there. That would have been a good use that would have I felt, and again, I'm bringing my implicit bias into it. And at least I realize that. But that would have been, I think, a better use of dollars. to get people in. This is one of the reasons I kind of, I'm on the Saluki Pride Committee with the Chamber of Commerce. And one of the reasons we started pushing these Saluki Stay scholarships is we know that there's a lot, not a lot, but there are students who come to SIU and for one reason or another, they cannot afford to stay there after during their junior and senior years. So the Saluki Stay scholarships help provide them some funding, provide them some meals, give them some relief but they have to in return agree to come back here for their junior or their senior year, because it's all in the form of incentive for you to stay, because you're getting meals, but they're at Carbondale restaurants. You're getting rent, but it's for a Carbondale facility. So trying to induce students to come in and stay. And it would have been great if they had put the money into something to induce new students.
How long has the Saluki Stay Scholarship been in existence for?
It's about 5 or 6. Your time flies when you're having fun. I didn't realize I've been writing this Gazette blog for about so as many years as I have, until I go back and oh my God, this thing's dated 2010. Jesus,
how is it already 2021? I don't understand this.
I'm glad I'm still around to see it.
Was and I can't remember. I want to say was the Saluki Stay Scholarship initially an idea of Barrett Rockman's, or
I don't know whose it was. It was a Chamber of Commerce initiative. But I don't know if Barrett Rockman was the one who pushed it or not. I just remember, hey, this is. I remember getting put in front of the Saluki Pride Committee several years ago, and we've taken and run with it ever since.
Okay, cool. Something sticks out in my mind. Like I read
could very well be. I don't know who
initiated
the idea. It could very well be.
These are, like you said, these are the mechanisms, right? Just like we were talking before the podcast about what needs to be in these storefronts downtown, right?
Stores.
If you're going to have a storefront, there better be a store behind it.
Or something, yeah. Again, we have, it's better than not having anything. Because one of the things we have put in there that take away retail space at Carbondale Tourism, but you're in a perfectly viable storefront down there. You should be over in City Hall or in an upstairs facility and free up that storefront for somebody else, for an actual retail space where we can be selling stuff and generating revenue and generating sales taxes. Carbondale Tourism doesn't generate any sales taxes. But on the other hand, with so many empty storefronts in Carbondale, it might be a better use of it than leaving it sit empty if nobody wants to come in. Yeah. If somebody wants to come in and wants that space, I would say move Carbondale Tourism out to someplace else.
Yeah. Well, and the other aspect of it being the accessibility. Well, if you're wanting to have a central location where you guide people to experiences and activities from, how do you make a mechanism like Carbondale Tourism, like a Carbondale Main Street, like the Chamber of Commerce, all accessible to somebody simply looking for information physically in a space where you want them to participate.
Yeah. Having them downtown, because I remember at one time, the Chamber was out in Eastgate and tucked away in a little corner. But again, it doesn't need to be. That's a good place for it. It doesn't need to be a place where it doesn't need a centralized location. It should not be. Tourism, possibly. I've been in other Main Street facilities. They're on upper floors. There's unless they are going to do outreach to the community, they don't need a front and center location in the downtown. On the other hand, it's better than leaving them set empty.
Well, and that goes to a whole different conversation on plopping your city hall right into the middle of a downtown as well. And
city halls traditionally are in downtown. I don't have a problem with that. I do have a problem with the fact that they knocked down an entire square block and then left it sit empty for about 10 years while they tried to scrape together funding for the city hall. But again, that's was built. That's like 20 years ago. 40 years ago. And we knocked down the buildings, and we didn't get the money for it. And we left it sitting empty. Again, I have no problem with the city hall in downtown.
Yeah,
that's where it should be. It's a center. It's the hub of the community. People should be coming there. It needs to be in downtown because it's not. It needs to be a place in easy access. The Civic Center. I would like to see more parking for the Civic Center. We need more, because that's one of the things that hobbles the city's Civic Center, is there's not enough parking for events there. Okay.
No. So sometimes I'm looking for that next step, and you get on a roll, and you go, "Are there? Do I chime in now, or do I?" Okay. That was spot on. And you see something, very different, probably engaged in the Cape Girardeau community. Or, I mean, do you really just kind of go and teach and then
I
come
go
back
and teach. I look around.
Okay.
And they have in their downtown the same problems that Carbondale does. They have the same the thing that they have. It's much more of a photogenic tourist, because we have done a fine job of knocking down a lot of old buildings. All of downtown Cape Girardeau, well, I don't want to say all, but most of downtown Cape Girardeau looks like the 2-3 blocks surrounding the square, where we have the 2-story buildings that look like they were built, or that were built 120 years ago, that are probably not particularly sound or well wired. Most of the buildings in downtown Carbondale meet code and are much safer. You don't have to worry about, I'm going to turn on this light switch, and boom, my electrical system blows up. Because the wiring in most of the buildings in Carbondale is up to code and in much better shape. They meet safety standards, which a lot of those are the older buildings, which look cooler, but they don't meet. But they're not in great condition. Now, does that mean I'm going to regret when the city knocks down the Carbondale Cycle building to replace it with the new transit center? Because that's it would be a really attractive building if they didn't have that ugly green paint on it. But it's a beautiful building, and it adds to the atmospherics in downtown Carbondale. And I don't, the mass transit, the multimodal transit system, is going to bring people into downtown. It's going to offer them a nicer facility in which to wait. Have you been in the Amtrak station recently?
No, it's been quite a while.
It has too, but it's not aesthetically appealing. Putting in the new station with a nicer, because we don't even have a place to drop off. I think the bus just drops off people there in the pull-in, and then, hey, have fun, guys.
Yep.
So having a facility for the bus passengers, and from what I understand, they're going to have a drop-off point there for taxis and Uber. So it'll be a much nicer. I'm going to regret seeing that building up there at the corner of Illinois and Walnut get demolished, because I don't think the new building, at least from the artist renderings I've seen or the architecture, is going to replicate it as well or fit in. It's not going to replace that building. It won't be the same architectural style.
It looks, all the renderings that have been out there thus far, it looks like a lot of awning.
Yeah. Well, you need awnings if you're going to be. You don't want to get rained on when you get out of your bus or your taxi.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of awning. I think the landscaping will be better. Because there isn't much down there now.
No.
Because there's just not. We'll lose the parking lot, and I'm kind of interested to see if the city again segueing. Will the city continue its policy of not monitoring the parking meters? Because as far as I know, it hasn't since and I don't know if they're going to be listening to this and maybe start monitoring it again. But as far as I know, they haven't been monitoring They haven't been monitoring parking meters, and that's always something I've been is not having parking meters in downtown.
Mm-hmm. It's funny that I right. So I've never been a proponent of the parking meters downtown, but I at the same time really consider a lot of the policy points of do you follow an organization called Strong Towns by chance? Have you ever heard of it? So they're just they do a lot of writing and pontificating on just city and municipal policy things. Everything from land use to taxation to just general business development, and just a lot of ideas about what makes a town a strong town, a healthy community. And I just read this past week about how parking revenues are such a low-hanging fruit for municipalities to be able to fund smaller projects or things that they see fit. And I look at something like Carbondale's parking revenue, which it's either I'm gonna mess this metric up, I'm sure, but it's either our expense is around 150,000, our revenue is 350,000, or our overall revenue is just around 200,000. I'd have to go back and look at the numbers. It's been a little bit, but go ahead. Sorry.
The last time I checked, the amount we were taking in covered maintenance of the parking lots.
Okay. Just flat.
That was my give or take a little bit, but it was. But the reason we put parking meters in, because I remember for years back in the 90s, we didn't have parking meters.
Yeah.
And they were put in primarily, and it served a good function because they were. Because you remember the big parking area, the 710 parking lot
absolutely.
Before Evolve, and what students back in the 90s were doing, because parking permits were expensive, especially if you're a student with low discretionary income. They'd go park in the 710 parking lot, leave their car there for 10 hours, and go over to campus, and then come back, and it was free parking. I didn't have to pay for a parking permit, and I was taking up parking that would have been used by B&A Travel, Quattro's, Jerry's, 710, and all the building, Gumby's Pizza, if you remember the late, or Quiznos. And the parking was supposed to be there for them, for their customers, and they couldn't get it because students, by putting a parking meter in there, it made sure that you turned over that traffic, because somebody going into 710 is not going to spend 2 hours in there, and you could easily buy 2 hours with a quarter. That was going to keep the students from, and I think the maximum you could buy at the time was 2 hours. You couldn't buy 8 hours with the parking there, or if you could, it was some astronomical amount. So it kept students from parking in there, because if they came back, they'd get a ticket. And so that ensured turnover of people parking in that parking lot, and freed it up for customers who were going into those businesses.
Yeah, and that has been the argument for a lot of folks, being like, listen, the reason why we have pay to park right now is because years ago it was to manage the abundance of traffic in these areas, and now that we have very limited traffic in these areas, what still makes sense to go. And I struggle personally, the accessibility component of it, that now instead of you get out of your car, boom, there's a meter, we're done. Now it's get out of your car, go to the kiosk, go back, and it's then you're starting to put barriers between the consumer and the businesses that ultimately they're going to go engage with. And it's not for a lot of folks a major barrier, but for a number of folks out there, just the mental idea of I didn't like this experience once, I'm not gonna go back and do it again 2 weeks later when I want breakfast at Mary Lou's, so I'm not gonna stop and hit the kiosk and do whatever. I'm just gonna hit the drive-through and keep going.
From the city's point of view, those kiosks are a lot more efficient.
Oh yeah, because they can manage it for them much better.
They can manage it because I only have one place I have to check, rather than going and checking every frigging individual parking meter in downtown. So very much more efficient. Not sure if it is as an effective as allowing me to put up there. Now, if we could use credit cards on the meters, or because I think we can use credit cards on the kiosks, but if you had a swipe on the meter, that would have been very effective and efficient.
Yeah. But then we got to get our downtown Wi-Fi to work if we want everything to connect.
Do we have downtown Wi-Fi?
Scott.
I've used the downtown Wi-Fi. I had a period where the store's Wi-Fi internet went out. I don't remember what the rationale was, but I was going down and sitting with my computer on the in the town depot and the pavilion, and like getting onto the city's Wi-Fi, and it was perfect. It was inconvenient, but it was powerful enough. I was able to use it for about the week that our Wi-Fi was out. Yeah,
good.
So it was cold,
but it was functional.
Yes,
that's good. I've not had. In a time where the downtown Wi-Fi functioned well for me, and I've heard that
they keep doing it, and part of the deal is we're with, I think, whoever we have our agreement with, they're supposed to be providing downtown Wi-Fi, but it has, and I haven't checked it for years because I got my phone here with my own portable Wi-Fi on it, so I don't have to. But for students who don't have that and who need to use Wi-Fi, having something would be an incentive to get them into come. And that was the original purpose, was use it as an incentive to get people to come into downtown, so they weren't taking advantage of local businesses that who were using and using up all the available bandwidth.
Yeah, the and it'll be in the blink of an eye that all of a sudden this town is has functional 5G, and then things like the Wi-Fi networks are even less valuable to the folks, because the whole point of this 5G technology is to be able to provide a wireless replacement for hardwired internet.
Yeah, I don't even check anymore to see if I have Wi-Fi connections anymore, because my phone plan is reasonably priced enough that it's just as easy for me to use my phone data as it is for me to, is there a Wi-Fi around here? Let me move my neck around like this and see if I can pick up a signal by oops. That was not a good idea. Stretching out my arm around this corner to see if I can pick up something. I haven't had to do that. I haven't even thought about doing that for years.
Technology moves.
Yeah,
technology moves. Well, we're getting into the later throws of the podcast. I love the conversation that we have had thus far, Scott. But there are a couple of things that I absolutely have to touch on before I get too far out there. One is always what is usually the introductory question of, what brought you to Carbondale? How did you come to be in Carbondale, and all that fun stuff? And the other will be, we'll kind of transition from that into talking about Castle Perilous, because yeah, I know, right? A novel idea to talk about something that's so very you, and just give some insight to that, because you really are, you have created this iconic entity in this town that is not just. That's not just iconic standalone, but really has fed into a broader community and allowed Carbondale to provide for the folks that have an interest in gaming and media and niche cultural activities. So, rewinding a little bit, what brought you to Carbondale to begin with?
I assume a motor car is not the answer you're looking for.
I'll accept it.
Okay. Well, I got tired of working for Walmart back in '90 and decided, let's go get a master's degree, because what else does one do when one gets tired of working for Walmart? I'm up here in Mount Vernon. I could go to Harvard and get a master's degree, or I could go to SIUC. SIUC is much closer and cheaper. So I came down here, got a master's degree, applied for my master's degree, taught at SIUC for several years, got my doctorate, started the business, then and have been here ever since.
Nice. And the business, let's talk through the lifespan of Castle Perilous. First off, name, awesome name.
Yeah, I would. If I was to do it again, I wouldn't call it that.
What would you call it if you had
probably
chance?
Shawnee Games.
Shawnee
Or
Games.
Carbondale Games or Illinois Ozark Games, or something that ties into the local area. But it's Castle Perilous. I've got 30 years brand equity built up into it. I'm not changing it.
Yeah.
You
I
know,
mean,
not right
that's
now.
one thing.
That
Once you're
came from a
tied to
board game. I was playing a board game, the SIUC Strategic Game Society. One summer we were playing. It was in playing board games in one of the halls on campus, and it was a King Arthur board game. And if you're at all familiar with the King Arthur legends, you have during the quest for the Holy Grail, they visited the Forest Perilous, the Chapel Perilous, and the Castle Perilous in seeking the Holy Grail. And those were three of the spaces on the game. And a friend of mine, you really ought to name one of these things. And the Forest Perilous Games and Book, no, that didn't go. Chapel Perilous sounded a little bit sacrilegious. Oh, Castle Perilous, that has a good ring to it. So I say, okay, sure. If I ever open up a game store, I'll name it Castle Perilous. And I opened up a game store and named it Castle Perilous. So I have people come, oh, did you name it after the John Delancey books or the King Arthur legends? No, it's a spot on a Wotan Games board game.
So you brought in a bank of retail experience and understanding to launching the business.
I had worked retail before, and I had also sold games, mail order, and at conventions in the St. Louis area for about 10 years. So I had some experience in the field. When I opened the store up, we did not have there. If you lived here a long time, you would remember Book World. It's located down where Campus Cuts is now on the south end of the street.
Book World, if I recall correctly.
Yes, it was two words.
There you go.
Book
Well,
World.
there was. Never mind. I'm not going to go off onto that end.
You had Book World, then you had Book Depot.
Yeah. Okay. All
And
right.
both, anyhow, Book World had a stretch of one wall of board games and primarily role-playing games with their big and miniatures, like Dungeons and Dragons. And there was enough of a demand for it that I said, I could probably, I'll let them have the books, because most of their money was came off of selling used Playboy magazines. So
I think that's part of where the Book World quotation marks came into play with some of the.
Yeah, there was a section in the back of the building, from what I understand. Not that I ever went there, of course.
Yeah.
But anyhow, I opened up a store on the second floor of the island because that was all I could afford at the time, and put it in, and it proved slowly successful. So that over the next 10 years. 12 years, we expanded over to take over the top. I think we had about 85% of the top floor of what's now what people call the Island Building. And then eventually, when the opportunity to pick up the spot, I was looking for it because there wasn't much more I could expand into because we had most of the top of it, and I was getting pretty crowded. So when the opportunity, I started looking around for a place, and when the 207 location came up, okay, we'll buy this.
Yeah.
And we moved up there back about, I think it was about 2007. And we've been there ever since. Happily.
It's just a beautiful building. Just that bright white and red.
Yeah,
And
and
you've
a
been
big
able
rock.
to accent it accordingly.
And the big rock out in front. Makes it easy to identify.
Yeah, well, I mean, at some point there was a nice gazebo, but,
Well, it died in service to saving the castle.
that that it did.
For anybody who doesn't catch that, there was an auto wreck there earlier last year, and we had a gazebo in front of the building, and it protected the most of the building from the impact of the car. So, but unfortunately, the poor gazebo did give up its life and got hauled away unceremoniously. I think we did have a Norse Viking funeral pyre for it.
I remember, if I recall correctly, the purple signs that are like love or forgive or what have you from
St. Francis Xavier.
St. Francis, thank you. being out front. And I remember like the forgive sign being there in front of the wreckage.
Yep.
And I just thought how poignant to have the forgive sign there where there had been some to just neat memories. I'm sure not amazing memories on your end. I mean, happy to have the building, but not always great to
I would rather not have a car try to come in through my front window, but
Right.
on the other hand, nobody was hurt. And the insurance covered everything, so that's what one has insurance for.
That is it.
One does not plan to have a car come hurtling into the front of your building.
So how has your business changed over time, and what are some of the things that are very much the same?
Okay, here's where we started off. The theory or the market for the types of products, it was primarily role-playing games like Dungeons & Dragons, appealed to a very specific market niche. And the two markets the things you looked for when setting up a business like that was either A, a college, which, hey, we have one here, or B, a military base, because at the time a lot of young military men were playing these sort of games. So I looked for a place. I thought about getting a place. There was an opening in front of Scott Air Force Base at the time, and I thought about renting that. But I wound up, I was going to college down here, and the commute would have been a hell of a pain.
Yeah.
So we opened up down here, and over time, at the time, my sales when we started off, it was 80% SIUC students, about 20% people who would wander in and kind of look around, what is this stuff here? And then they might come back and get interested. But over time, as the students have become more digitally aware and they're much more likely to play on online platforms and use PDFs, and frankly, they don't have as much discretionary income, so they're going to buy it as cheap as possible. Our focus has shifted more towards local residents. And the last time I checked, we do about 70 to 75% sales to local non-college students and about 25% to college students.
Wow.
But again, it's important to remember, Carbondale would not be as big as it is if it did not have SIUC.
Oh,
There's a symbiotic relationship between the two. As SIUC does well, Carbondale does well. If SIUC, and it's not the other way around, Carbondale doing well doesn't have that much of an effect on SIUC. SIUC, unfortunately, is the dog wagging the Carbondale tail. If if we can turn around and God knows we've turned SIUC around so many times, we're back where we started from. But if they can figure out how to fix SIUC and build enrollment back up, the phrase "a rising tide lifts all boats" would be quite applicable here. Carbondale would see a definite reemergence of its fortunes. You would see all those empty storefronts in downtown filled because people would want to be selling stuff. But you can't lose half the population of like SIUC has and not see a corresponding decline in revenue and the economy of the surrounding community.
I mean, the reality is, bodies participate in transactions. Transactions generate the revenue, and the revenue is what's used to further, the actions and the activities of, it's a closed loop, really.
And we've had a decline in those bodies, and nobody has been able to figure out how to change it. I've always thought it was the fact that we haven't had someone of the stature of Delight Morris as the head of the university. Morris was, I believe, 45 to about 80, if I recall correctly. And when you have somebody, his ideas may have gotten ossified. And toward the end of his life, he got forced out and had problems. but his focus was on the university. We were the first one. We were one of the first universities to actively embrace the GI Bill. We had a lot of GIs coming here to school. We were one of the first universities to actively seek out and bring in international students. At one time back during the 90s, we were the number 2 size of resident. Number 2 for more. We had the second largest Indian student community of any university in the nation. We were one of the first universities to actively recruit students under the ADA and welcome disabled students here. And that was all part of Delight Morris. We don't have anybody, at least, sorry, SIUC if I'm wrong, we don't have anybody the stature of a Buckminster Fuller on campus anymore. And he, whether or not he taught much, because he, from what I understand, was only obligated to teach about 1 class a semester, but he brought a national attention to SIUC. And none of the heads of the university that have followed him have come in with such a focus on the university and a strategic plan, whether it was a strategic plan or tactics, but to get students to come here. Today, we have a lot more competition for international students from universities all around the country. We can't rely on them anymore. Most universities now are seeking or are accepting and becoming more welcoming to disabled students. Universities now, a lot of online universities are actively seeking out GIs and using government bend-aid, which is a big problem for the online universities because they don't provide a good education in a lot, especially if they're for-profit. So those revenue streams, for want of a better word, that drove the university's growth during the 50s, 60s, and 70s are no longer there. Where are we going to go?
Then the question is, what, and it's not about recreating, what has happened in the past, right? Because the reality is, we've already built those standards into our activity, right? The question is, what is the thing that, 10 years from now is going to be the thing that everybody wants to look to do in higher education, and why aren't we doing that now?
Well, we have a nationally recognized auto tech program.
Oh, yeah.
We have a nationally recognized aviation program. We had, I'm not sure if it still is considered, we had a nationally recognized journalism program. We had fairly well recognized people in the business program. I know because I was there. But whether or not they're still there or not, because I haven't been there for a number of years. But we don't see, the university does not seem to do a good job. It may be it does it behind the scenes, but they don't trumpet it in this era or area that, hey, we're doing this, this, and this. They should be getting press releases out into the Times, out in the DE, out into the Southern, out into WTF Carbondale, out until WSIU or any news stations on a regular basis, talking about what is powerful or unique about the university. It's going to bring more students in.
Yeah. Well, and I think, the question of what is, accountability to the community for the university, right? And the SIU's, internal news functions that pushes out things from news.siu.edu, focuses on a lot of the feel good activities, right? But doesn't, I think you're right, doesn't give as much exposure to the nitty gritty of the work that's being done. And I think that just like any old math professor would want you to do, it's the concept of show your work.
Sure.
Right. And there's a difference between saying, hey, here's an outcome, and saying, here is how we got to that outcome. Yeah. Those are two distinctly different stories to tell.
I think SIUC, because I remember back under Rita Chang, one of their big initiatives was banners. No. No. Banners are cool in the downtown, but that's not an initiative. That's advertising.
Yep.
And you're not going to get students coming into town because of banners.
Yeah.
It makes it look cooler once you get people here, it makes it look welcoming, but that you're much like you're not going to get people here because you're to a non-athletic student come here because of your athletic program. You're not going to get people to come here before banners.
Yep.
And thank God the university, and we no longer have the pony. I believe anybody let them put the pony. Okay, that's another story altogether.
Well, that's exactly right where we land for episode 55 as I get the camera to focus in on me here with Scott Thorne. Another interesting person living an interesting life in this little old place we call home, Carbondale, Illinois. Thank you, Scott. It was a wonderful conversation. One that, as I, figure out kind of who folks will be as we get into maybe the hundreds of episodes, who do we need to revisit conversations with? Scott is undoubtedly one of those folks. And as I always say, have a good one, folks, whatever that one may be.